All right, guys. Hey, so as farmers and as consumers, these buzzwords are being thrown at us all the time. Sustainable, stewardship, organic, natural, grass-fed, biological, soil health. So let's cover some basic definitions so we have a common starting point of a conversation here. If we don't know where we're starting from, how we're going to discuss. So by definition, the great thing is we have dictionaries. By definition of sustainable. Sustainable is, where did you go? Can be understood as an ecosystem's approach to agriculture. Practices that can cause long-term damage to soil, including excessive tillage, and blah, 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 are not part of that program. Stewardship. What does stewardship mean? It's an ethic that embodies the responsible planning and management of resources. So sustainability, sustainable farming would basically follow these 5 principles of soil health. Being a good steward of the land would basically be following these 5 steps of soil health. Who came up with these? Don't know. Do you have to agree with them or like them? No, you do not. If you don't, I don't care. I didn't come up with them. They have nothing to do with me. But you know who does care? The consumer and General Mills, Land O'Lakes, ADM, Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, Wrangler Jeans. Remember a couple weeks ago we had the video with 20-some companies that are trying to market soil health products. They care about these 5 steps. Why do I care about these 5 steps? Because the consumer cares, and if the consumer is willing to pay me a premium and take my product ahead of conventional product, I care big time. That's a better living for me. That makes me sustainable. Yay! I might be here in 10 years, maybe not. So these 5 steps: soil armor, residue, keeping the ground covered with the residue there. So behind the combine, if, well, back up here a half a second. So the organic community knows about frauds. There's been frauds in the organic, wasn't it 10, 15 years ago that Walmart or one of these big companies got caught labeling non-organic food organic just to try to capitalize a few pennies or some real dollars on produce? So we know all about fraud. There's a lot of frauds out on social media, in magazines, YouTube, regular social media. There's a lot of farmers that claim to be good stewards of the land because they tile. Tiling, when the rest of your farm has nothing to do with these 5 things, does not make you a steward of the land. That makes you spend a lot of money. Is there a place for tile in this soil health thing? There sure is. Is it the very first thing I do? Depends on the situation. I'm not against tile. I'm against broadacre tiling that we see just because it's not sustainable and it's not being good stewards of the land. Are they growing better crops on that ground? Sure. Could they have taken some years to do farming health? But we're getting off subject. So tiling can be used in a soil health situation, but if they are promoting that they are being soil health because they're doing tiling when the rest of their farm has nothing to do with these 5 things, then they're just full of shit. So soil armor. What do we got? We got residue. So when you as a consumer, consumers need to get educated on this because the markets are coming to the consumer and they're coming fast. You got these 20 companies or so. That list is growing all the time. These companies, they care about this list. They're creating evaluation paperwork for farmers to fill out to see what health score you have and how you get paid accordingly. So they're already creating the markets. It's just a matter of time before it starts hitting the consumer. So consumers need to get educated. So when consumers are seeing farmers on social media, in public, driving down the road, and they see things like sustainable and stewardship, well, what by definition? We know that this is taking responsible action and using our resources in a natural, good way. Soil armor, residue. What is residue? Residue allows water to help get into the soil. It stops wind erosion and it stops water from running across the soil. So if you see snert, the dirt and snow mix, That is not a sustainable or a stewardship farm. By definition, that is not a farm that does stewardship practices. Um, the minimizing disturbance. So in the fall, if you see tillage going on where they're chopping and mixing the residue and got the deep shanks running in the ground, creating blackness behind the combine, that's not stewardship and that's not sustainable. Why would that not be sustainable? They're growing good crops. They're making good money because they won't be here very long. Whether that's 5 years, 20 years, 50 years, that's on a farm by farm basis. But what makes it not sustainable big time? The consumer. It's only the consumers, and this market is just getting going. It's not going to take long before it goes up. Why? Because the consumer wants farm to table. They want mom and pop type farms producing the food, a quality food. And so the same people that push the organic are now creating more and more markets for that to expand on that. The other part that won't make it sustainable, other than you're going to start losing out on some of your customer shares, is the cost. The cost between being compliant to regulations or the cost of the horsepower, the fuel, the labor, the replacement of these tools is only getting more and more expensive every year. The commodity is not keeping up, so farmers are just retaining more debt. 20 some years ago in the 80s, farmers carried a 2 to 1 debt ratio. Now farmers are carrying a 3 to 1 debt ratio. But John, I'm rich. Grandpa had the farm paid for, Dad had the farm paid for. I don't have to pay for the farm. I don't have to worry about these costs. You still have to worry about regulations, and it's just a matter of before your old money gets burned up. I would start looking into this if I was a conventional farmer, because if I wanted to pass my farm on down to the next generation, I'd want it to be here, and I'd want to pass something down to them that's going to be able for them to make a living off of. So that's why we can say conventional farming is not very long-term sustainable. There's so many things attacking it. Minimizing disturbance. So is it black in the fall behind their combine? If it is, they're not being good stewards of the land. Plain and simple. No till, strip till, vertical till, vertical till, and strip till fall within stewardship, sustainable soil health. Yes, it can. Is it the best? No, it's not. Vertical till would be the worst of the three because it covers the width of the machine. It chops the residue. It loosens that top soil structure. It exposes the soil to water runoff, which carries nutrients into our creeks and streams and oceans and takes our money away. As a farmer, I'm more upset. I don't care about the pollution side of it. I do, but let's be honest. I care about my money. Trying to keep a roof over my head. I care about my money flowing down that stupid creek. And wind erosion as well. Water's not getting into the soil, which makes us more susceptible to small droughts, and the wind is carrying our topsoil away faster than we're building it. Diversity. Do you see that farm during the summer, whether you drive by their farm on the road, whether you see them on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, in a farm magazine that claims that they are sustainable and stewards of the land? Do you see down their corn rows or down their soybean rows, is it black in between the rows? If it is, they're not sustainable. They're not being good stewards of the land. They should have something growing in between their row crops to help the soil. It helps with water infiltration, reduces the need on tiling. Again, tiling has its place, but it's not the crutch we make it out to believe. If they had something other than, and are they doing something other than corn beans? So every time you take your family on vacation and you drive by that farm, last year was beans on the hill, this year it's corn on the hill, next year it's beans on the hill. Or are you seeing small grains and grassland and stuff being rotated in? If you're seeing the diversity of rotation along with the diversity of the living roots, then yes, they are being good stewards of the land. But if no, then no. By definition, they are not being good stewards of the land. That's a hard pill for a lot of farmers to swallow. Who the fuck do you think you are? Tell me I'm not being a good steward of the land. I'm not. I just pulled up the dictionary, the by definition, and it ain't. But I'm kind of saying you're not being a good steward of the land. I'm flat out saying you're not being a good steward of the land. If you have dirty water running into your ditches, you better look up the definition of being a good steward of the land. Keep a living root. So behind cereals, behind small grains, behind the corn and beans, do they have green in the field or do they have black? And then we get snert and we have wind erosion all winter long. Do you ever see livestock on the land? Livestock is not mandatory to be a good steward of the land or sustainable or even in the soil health. It is just one aspect that brings it all together, and it brings it together so beautifully. So beautifully. It ties it all together like, brother, you ain't ever seen before. And so, yeah, this list, much like some of their parents, this list to sustainable and stewardship is related. People need to figure this crap out. Consumers really need to be on the ball of this, the education route. And I can't wait. Now, Seth keeps telling me, he says, we don't need government labeling. And I kind of agree now. I used to be a big advocate or proponent of we need country of origin labeling on our meat. And some of the guys are like, why? Why? When the consumer has a device that someday in a couple of years, hopefully it's here tomorrow. I can't wait for it to get here. Hopefully it will be here and they can scan this fruit, vegetable, meat, whatever they're doing. They can scan it and it gives them the nutritional content. And then they can go to the other company and they can scan that one. And the consumer then can decide, do they pay the premium for the more nutrient-rich food or do they just buy the cheap stuff? And so then the labeling will be irrelevant because the consumer will have the power in their hand to make the decision that they want to make. We can go back. Organics have known it for years. The guys that are organic, doing no-till, following these 5 methods, their quality of product is off the charts compared to today's conventional growing stuff. You never hear of organic farms that follow these 5 rules of having E. coli recalls. It doesn't happen. That's a soil health issue. So yeah, being that this market's coming, and it's coming, guys. 1, farmers better learn to get on board. 2, consumers better educate themselves about what's happening, and consumers better be looking out their window when they're driving around the countryside and call a spade a spade. If that magazine article or that guy on YouTube or that guy on Twitter or Instagram, wherever you see these people, wherever non-farmers run into farmers, if they're claiming to be good stewards of the land, if they don't follow these things, they're not being good stewards of the land. By definition, they're not. By the industry standard, they're not. I get a lot of backlash. Oh boy, I get a lot of backlash from farmers. Like, how dare you speak against the community like that? We are doing our best. I'm not saying people are doing a bad job. Farmers are just trying to make a living. I'm just saying that you better get educated as to what the true, if any farmer is going to claim to be a good steward of the land or claim to be sustainable, then they better get educated on the definitions and they better look at what it really means to be there. Now, there's a tremendous amount of fun farm videos on YouTube that don't claim to be anything. They're just Bob out planting corn, and that's great. Love watching Bob plant corn. He has great videos. But when Mark, his neighbor, has videos saying, I put tile in because it's sustainable and healthy for the soil, as they do full tillage on the rest of the farm, he's full of shit. Plain and simple. He's ignorant of the system, and he has no clue what's going on. Yeah, we don't see YouTube videos of farmers pulling up to a creek saying, geez, I only got 50 gallons of herbicide left. It's the last price of the year. I can't save it. I'm just going to pull up to this creek and dump it. There's no farmer on YouTube doing that. There probably is in real life, but there's no farmer on YouTube doing that. So every farmer on YouTube is trying to do a good job of conveying ag to the community. After sitting at lunch table with the community for over 15 years, I can tell you that the guys that the community that have their mind made up of what their definition of sustainable steward and what a true farm looks like, you're not changing their mind. We can come on here, we can go out and find a very large farm, and we can make the most cinematic piece of art you've ever seen. And we can put all the facts and data we want. And we can show it to them guys that used to have lunch with. And you know what they're going to say? Wow, that was some great effort. But you know what? That's still a factory farm. They're still just doing commercial fertilizing. They're just doing commercial farming. That's not what we want. And even if farmers aren't willing to listen, the companies are. General Mills, Ladder Lakes, I don't need to go through the list again. They are listening. They're making the market. You either get on board or get left behind on some of this stuff. So guys, yeah, dear consumer, do your homework and enjoy your new healthy markets that are coming out for you. Farmers, if you want to claim to be stewards of the land and sustainable, then know your shit or shut your mouth. Yeah, so I think that's a great one. I'm going to leave it right there because this is take 52, and I need to get my day started. And so guys, on that note, thank you very much for watching.